What's up, guys? It's Nick from SpiritFly. Hope everyone's had a wonderful holiday season and is looking forward to an awesome new year of fishing. So today I wanted to share with you a couple of tips that will help you as a beginner in fly fishing catch more fish and just have a lot more fun on the water. Probably the most effective technique to catch trout in a river is the nymphing rig. I have a pretty simple rig here. We got the indicator, the point fly, which is your biggest fly, and then you have your nymph, which is your smaller fly. I really recommend these little ball indicators. They twist off and they twist in half. They're really easy to use, and the thing I really like about them is that they're simple to adjust. So when you're nymphing, you'll be changing your depth, the depth that your flies is flowing at. Sometimes it might be real shallow, so you'll have your indicator close to your flies, or sometimes you'll be fishing a deep hole, so you'll have to extend the space in between your indicator and your fly. And these indicators make that so easy. You can slide it around and then it locks right in place. So then you have your point fly, which is right under your indicator, and this will be your biggest and heaviest fly. I like to use heavy flies for my point flies so that I don't have to use a split shot or any kind of extra weight to get my flies down. It just makes casting a little bit harder when you add all these elements that are under your indicator. It can make it a little bit more difficult to cast. So as a beginner, I like to recommend that you keep it as simple as possible. So then you'll have your probably most important fly, which is your smallest fly. I love to use these smaller emerger type patterns, say like some RS2s, chocolate foam wings. There's endless patterns that imitate these emerger type bugs. What I also recommend is, as a beginner, you want to stick to the heavier tippet. So tippet is going to be the line that you put in between your lead fly and your nymph fly. Most of the time, people are using about 5 or 6x tippet to put really tiny flies. This is about 7-pound tests, and it just gives you a little more leeway in when you're casting. Let's say you snag the bush behind you or a tree, you're getting snags. That 4x is a lot more forgiving and you won't be breaking off all the time. And this is just while you're getting a handle on things, you're figuring things out, and then you can start going off into the smaller flies if you choose. I've been doing this for 20 years and I still choose the 4x, and this is considered a bigger fly because I just normally don't mess around with the small things. I don't like the light tippets. I don't like the tiny little flies that I can barely see. They are effective, but it's just not my preference. And for this case, it's for making this whole nymph rig system a lot simpler for you as a beginner. The next important thing is your casting. This is probably what you want to keep the most basic of everything here when you are nymph fishing. The casting is not as important as, say, when you're streamer fishing. You're not casting your flies all the way across the river. You're not doing these long, intricate casts. Most of the time you're standing right next to the run that you're fishing, and you're kind of just flicking your flies upstream and allowing them to flow through the run. More importantly than your casting, I would definitely say, is your mending and your line control. This is what's going to make the difference between a successful day and an unsuccessful day. You want to be able to dead drift your flies through a run, and you want to be able to control your line enough to where you can dictate exactly what your flies are doing. You want to have full control, you want to have full contact with your flies so that you can set the hook correctly as well. So when you cast upstream, let's say you position yourself, let's say you're in the middle of the run and you're casting up to the head of the run. So you're casting your flies upstream. You want your flies to land above your indicator, upstream from your indicator, and then they'll flow down through the run. You have to be able to gauge where your fly line and your indicators are flowing. You don't want your fly line pulling your indicator and your flies downstream, and you don't want the fly line to be slowing your flies and indicator down through the run. This is just going to create the unnatural look if you're going for the dead drift. Now, my favorite technique actually is swinging the flies. So you can pair this together. When you cast your flies upstream, let them flow through, but by the time your flies reach you in the run, they're parallel with you and you see your indicator. This is where it's going to start dragging, but that's not a bad thing, because when the flies swing below you, this is where your flies are probably hit the deepest point of the run,
and then you're going to let your flies swing through, and then they'll be directly behind you. So what this does is it's allowing your flies to swim up from the bottom towards the surface and then swing across the fish that might be below you. So you're giving yourself the wide variety of opportunities while you're fishing the run. Dead drifting is very effective. It works extremely well for trout, but in my experience, so does swinging flies. When you swing them off the bottom or swing them across the run or twitch them upstream, I've caught a lot of fish this way. And I think it imitates, depending on what kind of flies you have on under your indicator, little leeches and these emerger flies, they do actually swim up from the bottom of the river. This is a natural action that happens. So it only makes sense that it would be a technique that would work. But as far as the regular nymphing goes, you want your flies to land upstream from your indicator and allow them to float through, and you just have to pay attention to your fly line. If you are standing close enough, you can do what's called high sticking. High sticking is where you don't let your fly line sit on the water. So in this case, let's see, if you're looking at the rig here, let's say you're fishing a shallow run and you have your indicator and your flies are underneath it. What you'll do is keep your fly line off your water. Your leader can be in the water, but what you'll do is you'll hold your rod tip close. You'll kind of point it at your indicator so that you can keep your line close and keep your fly line off the water. It's basically just keeping your fly line off of the water so that your flies can just flow without any drag at all. But high sticking is a good way to get your flies to be completely dead drift, and you're not having to worry about mending your line. Now, if you are you're wanting to cast a little bit further to where you can't high stick it, this is where you have to pay attention to the mending. You have to pay attention to the fly line and whether or not it's dragging your flies either upriver or downriver. So mending is literally you have to move your fly line either up or downriver depending on how fast or slow your indicator and flies are flowing. When you're out there, it's pretty simple. You'll see it and it's like it makes sense. It may not sound as simple when we're speaking about it, but I promise you it is very simple. When you're out there and you get to doing it, you'll see that this way of fishing for trout is very simple and it's very effective. So then let's talk about the hook set. So when your flies are floating through and you're watching your indicator and you see that sudden pause or your indicator shoots upstream, how do you set the hook? You always want to, it's just a wrist. It's just like you're casting, it's always just a wrist movement, a lift of the rod and a slight bend in the elbow. And when you lift your rod, you want to lift it downstream. You always want to point your rod tip downstream and up. This is what's going to ensure that you get that solid hook set and that you won't be losing fish. Now, of course, we're using barbless hooks here. Generally, when we're fishing for trout, and a lot of fisheries are barbless hooks and catch and release as well. So this is going to give you the best opportunity to hook the fish and keep them on the line. Now, as far as fighting the fish, you want to keep your rod tip up and you want to do what I call walking the dog. Walking the dog is basically paying attention to which way the fish is swimming. If the fish is constantly swimming upstream while you have them hooked, you want to keep your rod angled downstream. So it's the opposite. If the fish is swimming downstream, then you want to keep your rod pointed upstream. It's because if you picture the fish with the hook in its mouth, you want to keep the angle on the hook so that it stays hooked onto the fish. We're using smaller hooks, so this is pretty important when you are landing them and trying to get the fish into the net. As far as landing the fish, make sure you always have a net. Trout are pretty sensitive. You don't want to have them out of the water for too long. You don't want them flopping around on the ground or anything like that. You want to keep them in the water so that they stay healthy. And you just kind of have to think about it like, imagine if you had gone on a sprint and you had to hold your breath after that, right? So you want to give the fish a little break after you fought them, net them, let them sit in the net for a while, let them take a breather, and then you can pull them out and take some pictures and release them. This keeps them healthy and happy. Obviously, there is a lot more to it, you know, once you get into some more complicated techniques, some things that take a little bit more experience with your casting, experience on the water. You know, you can get into that as you progress, but right now as a beginner, you don't want to overwhelm yourself with all these different techniques and the way you cast and the way you fish and flies you can use. Just keep it simple. There are very simple flies you can use. The nymph rig will get you on fish for your entire fly fishing career. But right now as a beginner, I'd say the most important thing is for you to just keep it simple and go out there and have fun. Thank you guys for watching. I hope these tips were helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about any other topics that you would like to see or hear some advice on. Thank you guys, and stay tuned for the next one. Rainbow.